Welcome to the making of the Krause Lumber Company Model Railroad HO Scale. Before we get started, we're going to cover just a bit of history about the Krause Lumber Company and its growth. Krause Lumber Company purchased the White Pine mill site, no mill at that point in time, but the White Pine Mill was manufacturing in the early 1912 to 1917. They were in the noisy basin of the Swan Range, Kalispell, Montana, Flathead County, and it was again called the White Pine Mill. They had a mill pond, circular saws. The donkey engine carted the skeleton cars up and down the railroad. The mill manufactured white pine lumber. The mill was sold to the Summers Lumber Company by way of Lake of the Woods. In 1980, I could still find ties and spikes in the ground from the railroad. Krause Lumber Company also had their own logging operation. They had loaded their own logs, hauled the logs to the mill, and was a major manufacturer and distributor of lumber in the valley in the mid-1950s. That gave way to a small portable sawmill, and then from the portable sawmill they purchased a piece of property and manufactured lumber on a stationary mill. In 1954, they started production with the new sawmill, and in 1954 was the growth of a new sawmill that had a 40 by 120 mill building with a pond, live decks, stop and loaders, a bolter saw to cut the logs to length. This was sitting with a large carriage. Here's a picture of the mill. TV burner, the pipe going from the planer to blow the shavings into the burner, and you can see that. This is a piece of history that was known in Flathead Valley in the 1950s, 1960s, and did run even bits into the 1970s. Here's an aerial picture. You can see the log yards to the left, to the straight ahead with lumber yards. Here's a picture of the mill just prior to an auction when it was sold. Here you can see the teepee burner, the 40-foot teepee burner. It did have a Raleigh's carriage, which was a 3-dog air carriage. It was state-of-the-art in 1954, but it gives way to fancier equipment as it comes along today. The planer operation, as shown in this picture, was a manual operation. You will see that one man put the lumber into the planer and one person took it out of the planer. At the offset end, there is a trimmer that was a manual process, and there were bins to hold some of the finished lumber that was of the higher value. We did certify the lumber. It was a fairly unique situation. We did sell quite a bit of lumber in the valley, but as economic conditions changed, environmental conditions changed, it was no longer practical to live in the valley. The smoke from the mismanaged fires led me to leave the valley in 2021. We packed up everything, loaded it all up, and we headed on an adventure to the area that we're currently in that doesn't have as much smoke, has more daylight in the wintertime. It is far more healthy to be in. And as you'll see in the next picture, you'll see my son who has helped me with my move. And we went down the road to a very nice place in the middle of the wintertime where it was cold. After several months, we came to the conclusion that a little hobby that I had started back in the early 2000s, I had purchased a steam locomotive and a diesel locomotive, and it was time to start in with putting them together. I did go ahead and start with the DCC process right off the bat. I'll show that here. This was my first DCC project. From there I went to the green 1709 behind, and then the model 1914 we put DCC in them, but didn't put sound in those. Went ahead and dug out a Hudson that I had stuck in the shelf for 20 years and put DC sound in it. It'll show up here in just a moment. And it was a 464. Been sitting on the shelf, like I say, for 20 years. Pulled it out, put sound in it, and away it went. It's a good running little locomotive and has quite a bit of detail for a 20-year-old locomotive. Although that particular brand is not popular, I sure liked it. And then onward, we decided that I needed a place just out in the middle of the living room for the track, and the storeroom came to place. We took the storage shelves off the wall, which were 4x8 sheets of particle board, and the framework, and used the framework for the HO train set. We cleaned out a storeroom that you'll see in the next picture, just off on the right-hand side, and we put shelves in there, cleaned that up, put a rack across the end of the storeroom, and put a video server, a firewall, several other servers for miscellaneous jobs, a JMRI server, just a few things. And then you see the shelves in the background of the storm shelter. That worked out really well. I then went ahead and started in with Anyrail and started drawing plans for the railroad. And if you could see, you'll see that I have a place that I'm going to replicate the sawmill that was in the major picture. I'm going to have a lumber yard. It's going to show logging. I have them labeled as industry. I have a goal of building and displaying skeleton cars, elevated area to show we'll call it timberland, where they're going to have logging and line skidding, things like that, along with just a regular town and some industries in that town. I want to thank you for watching, and if you like this and want to see more videos like this, please like this and let me know. I have 2 more on the way in the next couple of weeks. Thank you again.